Every time an acoustic wave strikes the human ear, raw mechanical energy is instantly translated into rapid, measurable neural firing. Historically, we have treated this phenomenon as an aesthetic mystery, a cultural or philosophical artifact largely disconnected from empirical science. Modern clinical practice requires a different perspective, defining music as a highly quantified, targeted neurological intervention. This creates a unique clinical paradox. Music therapy operates simultaneously across two scales, manipulating micro-cellular neurobiology while navigating macrosystemic social ecosystems. To harness both scales, clinicians require a unified, systematic framework to map these intersecting domains. Researchers Lars Ole Bonde, Coretta Stenzath, and Even Rude developed that framework under the concept of health musicking. This diagram reveals two foundational axes. The horizontal x-axis maps the mind-body continuum, while the vertical y-axis spans the individual's social spectrum. These four quadrants organize diverse health affordances into exhaustive clinical categories. The central node defines the primary clinical objective, generating affirmative and corrective experiences. To validate this theoretical model, we have to systematically deconstruct each quadrant using primary data from neurology and sociology. This quadrant of the model focuses on the body and the individual, prioritizing physiological regulation through medical music therapy. The biological foundation here is rooted in mammalian evolution. Acoustic cues evolved to trigger the autonomic nervous system as a direct survival mechanism. Auditory signals feed into the brain's hub for predictive processing and stress assessment, the orbitofrontal cortex, or OFC. Western tonal music exploits this pathway by using precise patterns of tension and resolution to actively manipulate these OFC predictive circuits. In patients with obsessive-compulsive disorder, the OFC is hyperactive. The brain is trapped in a state of maladaptive stress assessment, excessively anticipating threats. Introducing structured musical tension provides a predictable regulatory mechanism, guiding the hyperactive cortex through a controlled cycle of buildup and release. This regulation extends to the motor system. Auditory signals form direct physical connections with the motor cortex, allowing the brain to internalize external rhythms. Clinicians use this synchronization to bypass neurological deficits. In Parkinson's disease, rhythmic acoustic cues can restore the timing and smoothness of a patient's walk. By leveraging this rhythmic synchronization, music acts as a physical catalyst to drive neuroplasticity and bypass damaged motor circuits. The upper left quadrant of the diagram explores the psychological dimension, how musicking generates meaning and shapes the mind. Neuroanatomically, signals route from the auditory cortex deep into the limbic system, connecting directly to the amygdala and the hippocampus. In Alzheimer's patients, music activates the hippocampus to form new neural connections that route around degraded tissue. This neurological embedding forms the basis of communicative musicality, a concept developed by researchers Colwyn Treverthen and Daniel Stern. They identified that micro-musical timing, tempo, intensity, and pauses, forms the fundamental architecture of human communication. Before language develops, these acoustic parameters generate primary intersubjectivity, allowing an infant and caregiver to share an intuitive emotional state. Clinical music therapists appropriate this intersubjectivity to stabilize patients with severe trauma, using rhythmic mirroring to establish an immediate communicative link. Rhythmic acoustic structures serve as the active encoding mechanism for human memory, allowing the brain to construct a cohesive autobiographical identity. The lower half of this diagram spans the social axis, focusing on the broader domains of empowerment and recovery. To scale these interventions, clinicians apply Uri Brodfenbrenner's ecological systems theory, mapping human health across concentric social ecosystems. At the meso level, clinical music therapy targets immediate institutional environments, hospitals, schools, or local community centers. Here, practitioners use reparative musicking as a tool to generate social capital among marginalized populations. In Nordic clinical practice, this includes utilizing rock bands to drive social integration within correctional facilities and psychiatric wards. The absolute limit of the framework is the macro level, the domain of systemic public health policy. At the macro scale, music serves as a multimodal health-promoting intervention, targeting the structural well-being of entire populations. Macro-musicking fosters inclusion and provides structural neuroprotection on a societal scale. Individual neurobiological gains are fragile. Without the support of these meso and macro-social structures, clinical recovery cannot be fully sustained. See the full context of this clinical discipline. Historically, therapeutic disciplines have operated within a friction point between the biomedical and humanistic perspectives, but cellular neuroplasticity and systemic social capital are not competing theories. The central cross of these axes demonstrate that they are orthogonal scales of the same system. A clinical intervention reaches its maximum efficacy only when it acknowledges and engages multiple quadrants simultaneously. This integrated framework defines the modern profession of music therapy. The modern clinical practitioner must be equipped to unify hard neurology with complex sociology. They are applying a tool optimized by evolution for human survival and systemic regulation. This discipline establishes music as a quantifiable instrument for interdisciplinary neurorehabilitation, integrating clinical neurology with social ecology.